On November 6, 2000, a call was made to the 911 service in San Diego, California, USA. The caller was a 25-year-old Kristin Rossum who informed the dispatcher that her husband, 26-year-old Gregory de Villers, was not breathing and that by all indications he had taken his own life. This seemingly straightforward story turned out to be quite complicated, and the police had to put in considerable effort to uncover the truth. Kristin Rossum was born on October 25, 1976, into a very affluent family. Her father, Ralph Rossum, was a professor at Azusa Pacific University, where he taught constitutional law, and her mother, Constance Rossum, also worked there. Christine was the eldest child and had two brothers, Brand and Piers. They lived in Claremont, California, USA. Christine was highly talented, attending a children's modeling agency and professionally training in ballet and dance. However, a serious ankle injury that tore her ligaments forced Kristen to abandon her dream of becoming a professional dancer. The medical diagnosis was a devastating blow for her, as it meant her ankle joint would never fully recover its mobility, which was a huge tragedy for Kristen, from which she took a long time to recover. In 1991, her father assumed the presidency of Hampton-Sydney College, and the family relocated to Virginia. Christine enrolled in an all-girls school in Richmond, where she began using alcohol, smoking marijuana, and later turned to using methamphetamine. Her parents were not pleased when they found out about her addiction and tried various ways to divert her from these destructive habits. Their relationship with their daughter became seriously strained during this time. They argued, locked her at home, withdrew financial support, and even had to involve the police on occasion. Christine's parents made incredible efforts to help their daughter overcome her addiction and return to a normal life. And finally, in 1994, she succeeded. Kristen got a job at the University of Redlands, and it seemed like her life was getting back on track. However, in 1995, she had a nervous breakdown, quit her job, and relapsed into substance abuse. Ultimately, she attempted to take her own life, but thanks to medical intervention, her attempt was unsuccessful, and she was saved. To try to divert her from the negative path she was on, her parents sent Kristen to travel to the city of Tijuana on the border of Mexico and the United States, where she crossed paths with 22-year-old student Gregory de Villers, who was also traveling there with his brothers at the time. An instant attraction developed between Christine and Gregory, which quickly blossomed into true love at first sight. After spending several days together, they decided to start dating upon returning home. Kristen and Greg grew close very quickly, with Kristen openly sharing her struggles with depression and the addiction she had not yet fully overcome. Greg understood that Kristen's involvement with illicit substances could harm their relationship, but his feelings for Kristen were so strong that he promised to support her through this challenge. He cared for her, putting incredible effort into helping her overcome her destructive habit. In the end, Greg's efforts were not in vain, and thanks to his unwavering support, Christine managed to overcome her addiction and completely break free from everything that had been detrimental to her health and well-being, an achievement that had seemed impossible not long ago. With Greg and her family's support, Kristen enrolled in San Diego State University and graduated with honors in 1998, leading her to secure a position as a toxicologist in the San Diego County Medical Examiner's Office. By that time, Greg had already completed his university education and worked for several years in an analytical agency. On June 5, 1999, the couple tied the knot and celebrated a lavish wedding. Gregory and Kristen's marriage lasted just over a year and a half, and initially, everything was more than wonderful. They were both young and happy. However, on one ordinary day, Greg was found unconscious in their bedroom, creating a perplexing scene for the paramedics and the police. Gregory was discovered unconscious on the bedroom floor amidst rose petals. A wedding photograph lay near the pillow, and crumpled pages from his wife Kristen's diary were found scattered on the floor. The police immediately found this whole scenario eerily reminiscent of a scene from the movie American Beauty. Gregory was quickly rushed to the hospital, where medical professionals declared him deceased upon arrival. Kristen immediately made an official statement to the authorities, claiming that her husband had taken his own life. She told detectives that on the previous day he had been deeply upset and depressed, had consumed a significant amount of alcohol, and had taken powerful antidepressants. The San Diego police did not rush to investigate, primarily because everything appeared to be fairly straightforward, and they did not want to get involved with Kristin's family. Greg's family was shocked by his death and refused to believe that their son could commit such an impulsive act. He was a lively, successful, young, and healthy individual who had no history of substance abuse. One of Greg's brothers, Jerome, was convinced that something was amiss and suspected that Kristen might somehow be involved in his brother's death. Jerome had his reasons for distrusting Kristine. He shared an incident that occurred when all three of them were students. Greg and Jerome shared an apartment during their university days, and when Kristen entered Greg's life, she moved into the apartment with them. For a while, everything seemed fine. They coexisted peacefully. However, at some point, Jerome noticed that various items, cash, and checks were mysteriously disappearing. Naturally, suspicions fell on Kristen, and despite her denials, the missing items were found in one of her purses. This led to a serious rift between the brothers, and Jerome was forced to leave the apartment. Unlike his brother, Jerome never truly believed in Kristen, considering her a pathological liar and a manipulator of emotions. Based on his suspicions, Jerome regularly contacted the police and requested a reinvestigation into the mysterious death of his brother Gregory de Villers. In the end, investigators found Jerome's arguments not entirely baseless and decided to reopen the case. Due to the potential conflict of interest, investigators sent the initial autopsy results of Gregory de Villers to an independent laboratory located in Los Angeles. During the subsequent laboratory examinations, a lethal dose of fentanyl was found in the young man's body, exceeding the permissible limit by 7 times. The police were deeply perplexed by this fact, particularly considering that the initial autopsy and forensic examination had been conducted in a laboratory where Kristen's spouse worked, and nothing suspicious had been discovered during the autopsy. Furthermore, the fact that the person responsible for the autopsy was none other than Michael Robertson, the immediate superior of Kristine, also piqued the interest of law enforcement. Investigators also requested recordings of conversations between Kristen and the emergency room doctor and interviewed the police officer present at the scene after discovering the body and at the hospital where Greg was taken. The police officer claimed to have witnessed Kristine being visited by a man whom she embraced, and it turned out to be none other than Michael Robertson. Continuing their investigation, detectives uncovered the following. Michael Robertson, of Australian origin, had recently been hired in the forensic medicine department as Kristen's boss. Despite the fact that the young woman had just gotten married, an extramarital relationship quickly developed between her and her boss, which went beyond professional boundaries. This was happening in plain view of their colleagues, and it seemed that only her spouse was unaware of it. Furthermore, investigators discovered that Kristen had resumed using illicit substances, to which she now had unrestricted access due to her responsibilities, which included registering confiscated substances stored in their laboratory. Upon learning about his lover's destructive addiction, Michael Robertson not only failed to intervene, as proper procedure required in such cases, but also chose to cover for her by falsifying certain documents. After the police uncovered these facts, they decided to conduct searches in the offices of Kristine and Michael. They discovered that the couple had recently participated in a conference where they presented research, sponsored by their employer, discussing fentanyl research and its effects on the human body. 1 month after Gregory's death, Rossum and Robertson were fired from the medical examiner's office. She for concealing her methamphetamine addiction, and he for enabling her drug use and engaging in a sexual relationship with a subordinate. Step by step, the police pieced together the events, gathering more and more evidence in favor of Kristen's culpability in her husband's death. In June 2001, 7 months after his death, Kristin Rossum was arrested and charged with premeditated murder. During interrogations, she recounted her version of the events leading up to her husband's death. Greg discovered his wife's affair with her boss entirely by chance when he found a love letter that had fallen from her purse. A serious argument erupted between the spouses, and in his anger, Greg threatened to expose the truth to her employer and her parents, among other things. This was the turning point in the decision to physically eliminate her husband. Kristen was aware that the consequences of this case becoming public could be catastrophic for her and her lover. Besides the risk of losing their jobs, they could face criminal charges. Since the argument between the couple occurred late in the evening, Kristen suggested postponing their discussion until the morning. The following day, waking up next to her husband, Kristen realized he didn't look well. Therefore, she offered him a headache and depression pill. After some time, Greg's condition not only failed to improve but worsened. He experienced dizziness and was on the verge of losing consciousness. Taking matters into her own hands, Kristen sent a text message to her husband's boss, apologizing for him and stating that her spouse couldn't come to work that day due to feeling unwell. She then left for work herself. During her lunch break, Kristen returned home supposedly to have lunch with her husband. Seeing that he hadn't improved, she left Greg home alone again and returned to her office. When she finished work and left the office at 5:00 p.m., Kristen decided to go shopping. Upon returning home around 7:30 p.m., she found her husband asleep, presumably still under the influence of the antidepressants he had taken earlier in the day. She went to take a bath, and at around 9:00 p.m., Kristen found herself in bed next to her husband. At that moment, she realized that her husband wasn't breathing. His complete lack of response caused panic, and suspecting that her husband was unconscious due to an apparent overdose of sleeping pills, she called the emergency services. On January 4, 2002, Kristen's parents posted a bail of $1, $25 million for her, and took her out of the pretrial detention facility. While the investigation was ongoing, the young woman remained free. The trial began in late 2002. The prosecution claimed that Kristin Rossum intentionally killed her husband to prevent him from revealing to her superiors that she was having an affair with the chief toxicologist, Robertson, and that she was using methamphetamine that she stole from the laboratory. In contrast, the defense attorneys argued that Greg was prone to suicide and had poisoned himself. Detectives presented compelling evidence that the young woman had acted deliberately and with cold calculation. According to eyewitness accounts on the day of Greg's death, Kristen was observed having a lengthy conversation with Michael Robertson. Additionally, when she went shopping, she intentionally paid in cash to avoid leaving a trace of her purchases without a cash receipt or surveillance camera footage. However, she made a small oversight. Before paying for her purchases, she presented her Vons store loyalty card, and the system automatically recorded a list of her selected items during the order process. Among other things on this list was a red rose. Investigators also discovered that shortly before her husband's death, Kristen had signed an agreement to donate his organs, and at the same time, she was preparing for his cremation. Such promptness in her actions raised significant suspicions with the investigators, as it was evident that she was trying to cover her tracks in the crime. On November 12, 2002, Kristin Rossum was found guilty of first-degree murder by a jury, and on December 12, she was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole and fined $10,000. She was sent to the Women's Institution of Central California in Chowchilla, the largest women's correctional facility in the USA. Michael Robertson, after being fired from the medical examiner's office, returned to Australia. He was named as a co-conspirator during Rossum's trial, but as of 2012, he had not been extradited to the United States to face charges in Greg de Villers' murder. In 2006, Greg de Villers' family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Kristen. On March 25, 2006, a San Diego jury ordered her to pay punitive damages in excess of $100 million. The family's attorney stated that they might never see this money, but it was done to prevent Kristen from profiting from her crime, as she intended to sell the rights to make a movie and write a book about her story. Greg's parents never fully recovered for the loss of their son. They were shocked by the cynicism with which the young man had been killed. He was very kind to Kristen, loved her, supported her, and believed in her. However, due to her troubled psyche, she failed to appreciate this and chose to turn to the dark side of her destructive addiction. Instead of addressing the problems in their marriage and opting for a divorce, she decided to poison her husband. Interestingly, Kristen showed no remorse for her crime. She blamed everything on Greg, saying that he smothered her with his love and did not give her the freedom she so desperately needed. During the trial, she behaved like a television star, drawing the attention of reporters. While cameras were not allowed in the courtroom during the actual trial, they closely followed her fashionable entrances and exits. Kristine repeatedly attempted to file appeals claiming the unfairness of her sentence, but each time, she received a denial. On September 3, 2011, the U.S. Court of Appeals issued a final rejection. Friends, please share your thoughts on this story in the comments and don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching